Hello everyone, myself Shweta Mannikeri, working as an assistant professor in Government First Grade College Bangapet in Computer Science Department. In previous class we discussed about operating system and its objectives and types of operating system. For BCA third semester for Bangalore North University, for today's session 2, we will discuss about operating system components and services provided by the operating system and the operating system two different structures. As we know, operating system is a system software. The software which is present in the system itself, we call it as a system software. Operating system is one of the system software that is present within the system itself, and operating system is act as an interface between the computer hardware such as printer, scanner, CPU, mouse, monitor, and it's also act as an interface between the user programs or application programs, because user cannot have access to the computer hardware directly. Someone should be there in between to access these resources in an efficient manner. It acts as an agent between these two, because user cannot understand the machine language and hardware cannot understand the language of the user. Someone should be there to communicate in between. That act was done by the operating system. Operating system provide an environment for the execution of the program in an efficient manner. Let us understand one example. If there is no operating system, the user, for accessing each of the resources, he has to write the commands or code. But it is very tedious job. Writing the for each application or task, he has to write the commands. It is very difficult. To avoid that, operating system provide an environment to access these resources in an efficient way. For example, if user is using any of the MS Word document or preparing any timetable with the Excel, for each and every command he has to write the code or program. By the use of operating system, without the knowledge of the hardware, we can access each of the application very easily. This is how operating system plays a vital role in the computer system. Without the operating system, we cannot imagine the computer system. Operating system is a backbone for any of the application to use in an efficient way. Operating system is act as a manager of all the resources. And also, operating system provides many of the components such as process management, main memory management, file management, input-output system management, secondary storage management, networking, protection system, and command interpreter system. Let us understand one by one what are these operating system components. Process management. Already we know that program in execution, we call it as a process. The operating system should take the decision when that process should use the system resources, at what time and when. There are number of system processes or user processes running at the system at the same time. The operating system should take the decision to allocate which process to CPU, when, at what time, which process to next. Allocating the process to a processor, that decision is also taken by the operating system. Not only that, once that process finishes its execution, deallocate that CPU from the process and allocate to another process. And it also has to manage process synchronization between these two processes, because when there are multiple programs are competing for the resources for the execution of the CPU. At that time, the proper synchronization between the processes is very essential, because if 2 3 processes are requesting for the CPU, the operating system should take the decision to which process to allocate the CPU at what time, because it cannot allocate two of the process to a same CPU at the same time. It should be a proper synchronization between the processes. For example, whenever we are doing the online reservation, the ticket should not be allocated to the same ticket should not be allocated to the two person at the same time. To avoid such situation, process synchronization plays a vital role by the operating system. In multi-programming environment, each process will communicate with another process. The proper message passing taken by the operating system. And whenever the process is running, it requests for the resource. Allocation of resource to the process is also handled by the operating system, because there is a situation arises like a deadlock, that is also called as a traffic jam of resources, because many times the process hold the resource and waiting for another process. Because of this situation, no work will be done. The proper process management is handled by the operating system. Main memory management is also very important component of an operating system. Here main memory is a collection of array or words. Here we are talking about main memory means RAM, random access memory. That is the memory very easily accessible by the CPU. Whichever process want to execute should be loaded into main memory. From the main memory, the CPU will take that process for execution. The allocation of main memory to the process is also handled by the operating system. Whenever the process requests for execution, it should be loaded into main memory and allocating that process to a main memory. In that situation, the operating system should take the decision how much memory needed by that process at what time, when. Once that process finishes its execution, deallocate that process from the main memory. There is a situation sometimes the process is not executing, it is waiting for the input output devices. In such situation, the operating system should swap that process from the main memory to secondary storage and allocate main memory to another running process, because there is a wastage of main memory. The constraint with the main memory is that the size of the main memory is very less. To avoid that, main memory management is also very crucial. And also keep track of who is using main memory at what time, when, and these details will be maintained by the operating system. And also the proper secondary storage management is also done by the operating system. File management. File is nothing but it's a collection of data or information. The management of files includes creation of the files, deletion of the files, and collection of directories. Collection of files is called as a directory. Creation of directories and deletion. And whenever user want to search any of the particular files, or defining some of the primitives for manipulating of files and directories. Manipulating files means reading or writing access to the user or particular program. And not only this, mapping of files onto secondary storage devices such as magnetic tapes, hard disks, and CDs. And for a later use, the file should be backed up on the secondary storage media. This all activities related to file is done by the operating system, because file we will store for a longer use on the system. Input output management. As we know, operating system act as a resource manager. It manages all the computer resources such as monitor, mouse, keyboard, printer, hard disk, and it is also called as a resource manager. How in a bank manager, how he manages all the activities within the bank, like that operating system manages all the computer resources in an efficient manner. That is the main goal or objective of the operating system to input output management. Whenever the process is running or executing, it requests for the many of the computer resources such as monitor, mouse, keyboard. The operating system should take the decision which process should allocate the resources, at what time, how much time, when. And operating system act as a resource allocator to the running program, and it also manages buffers and also manages device drivers, and by setting the sum of the read or write request links to a by providing some of the commands. This input output management is done by the proper resource allocation mechanism or algorithms. Secondary storage management. When we have to store the files for a longer time, we have to store it into secondary storage devices such as disk, tapes or optical for later use. The operating system should manage all the secondary storage devices. Whenever the process requests for the any of the files, it should check for the free space availability or free space management in the secondary storage devices, allocation of that resources to the system, and what goes there at what time. Now this secondary storage management is done by proper disk scheduling algorithms. Networking. Whenever we are using the distributed system, the data is shared between multiple users, and they have to communicate through communication links or communication network. They do not share memory or clock any of the bus. In that situation, the operating system should take the decision how to handle these data between the multiple users. The proper networking is also very important for the operating system to efficient communication between the processes. These communication takes place usually by using the different kinds of protocols like file transfer protocols, hypertext protocols, simple mail transfer protocols. These all decisions will be taken by the operating system to manage all the system resources between the users or between the programs. Operating system not only provides the components, it also has some of the services. Let us understand what are the different services provided by the operating system to the user. The first most is user interface, program execution, input output operations, file system management, error detection and handling, protection, command interpretation and resource management. User interface. The user interface means the interface through which user can communicate with the operating system or computer system. All operating systems have a user interface. There are basically two kinds of user interface. One is character user interface or graphical user interface. Character user interface is basically seen in the earlier operating systems such as a disk operating system before that, or even in our command prompt in the Windows, terminal in the Ubuntu. In character user interface, we are giving the input through the text-based commands or through keyboards. But it is not so user-friendly compared to graphical user interface, because If the user is not having the knowledge of the system, he cannot work efficiently with the character user interface. He has to know the commands to work with the system. In graphical user interface will be provided with the different kinds of menus where user will give the input through the keyboards or mouse pointing device. With the help of graphical user interface, user without the knowledge of the computer system, he can work with the system, and it's very user friendly interface as compared to character user interface. Nowadays, all the operating system is made with the graphical user interface. Program execution. As we know, program when it is executing, it needs many of the resources and it should be loaded into main memory. From the main memory, that will be fetched by the CPU for execution. Starting of a programs, managing their execution and communicating their results will be done by the operating system. As we know, whenever the program is running, it requests for many of the input output devices, and allocation of these resources to the running program is also taken care by the operating system. For example, when the program needs a printer, it should allocate the printer to the running program. If it requires memory or execution, if it needs CPU, that resource allocation is done by the use of resource allocation algorithms. Many times, many processes request many of the resources. In that situation, operating system should take proper decision for which process to allocate the resources, at what time, when, and at how much time it should allocate, and which process to next. Next comes the file system management. File is nothing but a collection of records or information. Proper management of file is also very important. Giving file names, and when user creates any of the files or deletes any of the files, it should be managed by the operating system. Not only this, if user want to manipulate that files, that is also possible with the help of operating system by providing different permission to the file system. Communication. Communication plays a vital role in the present scenario. Here we are talking about the communication between the two processes on the same machine or on the different machines. Here communication means process will communicate on the system with each other for message passing. It's very essential. It is also called as inter-process communication. Here process A can communicate with the process B for proper work done. Sometimes process may communicate on the same system, or process on the one system may communicate with the another system in the network environment. The proper communication channel will be built by the operating system. Not only this, the operating system should also handled by the process of the same user or of the different users. Error detection and handling. As we know, errors are obviously occurs in the system. There may be errors in the CPU, memory, file system, or hard disk crash. In such situation, the proper error detection and handling is done by the operating system. When we are passing the mails from one system to another system, in between there is a communication channel. The message should properly, in the same manner, it should pass to another system. There should not be any of the difficulty while the transferring of the message from one system to another system. That care will be taken by the operating system. Another example, when user is using with the printer and he want to take a printouts, but the printer is out of papers. In that situation, the operating system should give a notification there is no papers or out of papers. That proper error detection will be done by the operating system. If the system, when we are using any of the system, if the hard disk is crashed, that will also be notified by the operating system. Protection plays a vital role in the present scenario because our whatever we are storing the data should be protected from the unauthorized access. It should not be accessed by the unauthorized person. That's why the operating system should take a proper protection mechanism to handle these errors. And operating system ensure that all access to system resources is controlled. Operating system also ensures that external input-output devices are protected from invalid access attempts. Operating system provides authentication feature for each user by means of a password. When we are using Unix operating system, each user will be provided with the username and password. When user will give a authenticated user passwords and username will be authenticated and it will be given access to the computer system. In another example is whenever we are using Gmail accounts, each user will be provided with the proper username and password from which the authentication will be done and he will be given access to his Gmail account. Like that, protection plays a vital role for the computer system. Security is also very much concerned. Command interpretation. Command interpretation is nothing but the operating system act as an interface between the user and the computer hardware. User will provide some of the commands through which he can communicate with the system. Resource management. As we know, operating system act as a resource manager. He manages all the resources of the computer system in an efficient or optimal way. Whenever process requests for any of the resources, allocation of that resource to a particular process is very essential. If the process requests for the monitor to display any of the output, if he wants the keyboard to give input to the system, or if you want to print any of the document, if the process requests for the printer, these all resources will be handled by the operating system through proper resource allocation algorithms. It also monitors the different resources and it also manages the disk and files on the secondary storage devices. That's why operating system is one of the super manager of all the computer resources. Let us understand the different structure of a operating system structure. The first one most is the simple structure. It's also called as a disk operating system structure that is seen in the Microsoft DOS. It's a non-graphical command line operating system. MS-DOS originally written by Tim Peterson and introduced by the Microsoft in August 1981 and was last updated in 1994. It is a single user operating system, means only one user can have access to the system at the same time. This structure will be divided into different modules and will not provide much functionality because of its least space. Its interface and levels of functionality are not well separated. And it is basically using the character user interface to interact with the system. These simple structure is mostly seen in earlier operating systems such as DOS operating system. Unix system structure is is also known as a layered structure of operating system. It has some of the functionalities. It's provided with the system programs and kernel. Kernel act as a operating system and it act as a resource manager, and it manages file system, CPU scheduling, memory management and other operating system functions. A large number of functions for one level. Unix system structure is provided with a graphical user interface, and it will be provided with the multiple user can use with the system and multiple programming and multiprocessing. Let us have a small recap over whatever we studied today's session. Today we studied the components of operating system and services of the operating system and structure of operating system. We studied DOS simple structure and Unix system layer structure. These are the references. These are the very important textbooks or reference books you can refer for the operating system concepts to get the knowledge over the complete operating system functionalities. Thank you. Thank you DCA for giving me such opportunity.